G'day, James here. And what I want to show you today is something that I've learned about called the Monte Carlo Effect. And basically, this is something that we can learn from gamblers, people who do chronic gambling, that will actually help you to make better decisions in business around how to take action and what actions are going to get the best results. Now, I actually learned this from a friend of mine. His name is John. He's studying project management at the moment at university, and he's doing a unit on risk management. And one of the things he learned about was this idea that they call the Monte Carlo Effect. And what I'm going to show you, I'm going to just switch over so I can actually draw this out for you. And I'm going to show you what it looks like here on screen so that we can help to understand it a little bit better. So here we go. You should be able to see this coming up in front of you right now. And basically what I want you to think about is how gambling at a place like Monte Carlo works. And what I'm going to show you is how this can reveal to us some amazing insights into how we run our businesses and what we do with our businesses. And I basically want to first give you an understanding of one of the ways that gambling works. And this is basically how risk or how statistics work when we roll a dice. Now, imagine you've got a dice. You've got a normal, six-sided dice. It's got a 1, it's got a 2, it's got a 3. I know it's done with dots, but you've got that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Basically, if you roll that once, if you just do one roll, what do you know you're going to get out of that? Basically, you don't really know which number it's going to be, but you know that it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, right? It could be any of those numbers. And you've got exactly the equal possibility of getting any of those numbers. The potential of getting any of them is exactly the same. And so you only roll one dice. You don't really know what you're going to get, but you know you're going to get somewhere between 1 and 6. Now, here is the interesting thing they call the Monte Carlo Effect. Imagine that you've got that dice, only instead of just rolling it once, you roll it, say, 10 times. Now, do you know what is most likely to be the result after 10 rolls? Now, in any one individual roll, you don't know. It could be a 1, could be 6, could be anywhere in between. But across 10, you'll have some 1s, you'll have some 2s, you'll have some 3s, you might have some 4s, you'll have a 5, you might have a couple of 6s. Like, it's going to kind of even out a little bit. And so the average is going to be closer to the middle. Now, the middle between 1 and 6 is actually 3.5. So it's going to get close to somewhere like 3.5, because some of them will be 1s, some will be 6s, some 3s, 4s, all kind of averages out. Now, it still is possible over 10 rolls that you might roll a few more 1s than 6s. You'll do a few more low rolls than high rolls. So maybe for you, if you were to roll 10, you might average, say, 3, or you might even average, 2.5. However, what you would find is, imagine what if you rolled 100 dice. What would that look like? It's going to get closer and closer to the exact average of the 6 numbers that are there. You're going to get closer and closer to 3.5. Now, this is great. You're going, James, I get it. Okay, Monte Carlo, I kind of understand what's happening here. I roll 100 dice, going to have a bunch of 1s, bunch of 6s, 3s, 4s, 5s. The whole number are going to be represented there. So the average across all of them is going to be really, really close to the middle ground. How does this impact marketing and sales and business? Let me tell you this. Sometimes, imagine we take marketing as an example here for a moment. Imagine you do one paid ad somewhere. Let's do one Facebook ad. And you do one Facebook ad once. And maybe it goes really well. Maybe you get a 6 and you start telling everyone, oh, Facebook ads, they're fantastic. Yep, ran one. Beautiful. Got 5 clients out of it. Absolutely amazing. Or maybe you didn't get any. You're like, oh, no, it was pretty crap. I'm never doing another one again. I didn't get anything, spent $20 or whatever it is, $50, nothing. The truth is, if you only try the once, then you're only going to get some random result, potentially. You don't know if you could do it again. You don't know if it was a good result or a bad result for what you've put into it. You just know that, well, I've rolled the dice and I've come up with this result. But what if you do 10 of them? What if you take more action? What if you do something again and again and again? Suddenly, we're getting down to this territory, or maybe even more like this. You start to see, well, some of them succeeded really well and some of them did not so well. And so I kind of can tell now what my average is. I can tell what I should expect, and I know when I do really well, oh, that's above average. And I know when I don't do so well, I'm like, oh, that was below average. I could do better. And so taking lots and lots of action is a way that we can actually use the Monte Carlo effect to our advantage in business. we can do things again and again and again and learn what makes things better, what makes things worse, what is the average of what I'm going to do. Now, so basically, rule number one, I'll do it like this. Rule number one equals more rolls equals less risk, right? Because although you could score big or small, you know that the more you roll, the more certain you are of getting that average. Now, the next question is, yeah, but I don't want to just be average. More rolls means less risk. I get that, James. Okay, great. I understand. But I don't just want less risk of being unaverage. I don't want to just get an average result. What if I want to get better? And this is where I start to extend the Monte Carlo effect. You know, my friend John, he told me about how all this works, risk management. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And then my brain just starts pinging and I'm like, you know what? What if instead of the dice just being a 6-sided dice? I don't know if you've ever been to one of those sort of random role-playing games, or you've played some board game that involves lots and lots of different kinds of dice. But you can actually get dice. I'm going to have a go at drawing one here that have like, you know, well, you can get 20-sided dice. Oh, this is a terrible drawing, but you get the idea. It's a 20-sided dice, right? And when you roll it, you could get a 1, a 2, a 3, anywhere between 1 and 20. Now, if we only roll that once, obviously we could get a 1, we could get a 2, we could get any of those numbers right up to a 20. But it's similar to what I said up here. If we still only roll it once, we're only going to get one of those numbers. But what if we roll this 10 times or 100 times? All of a sudden, our average starts to move to the middle of this. We start to get a 10 or a 10.5. Oops, I'm saying 10 and writing 9, but we get a 10 because that's the average between 1 and 20. That's the middle ground. And so if we roll something more often, we reduce risk. And if we get bigger dice equals higher averages. Now, what does this mean for business? It means, you know, instead of just doing the same Facebook ads over and over again, what if you were to try something different? What if you were to get some education around it, or learn or watch someone else do it and figure out how they're doing it? Or maybe going up to a higher dice looks like doing things that aren't just Facebook ads. You know, maybe you're taking a bigger risk. You're doing something that might be like, you know, paid newspaper ads, or connecting with local medical professionals, because that might be sort of riskier. You've got to put yourself out there a bit more. All of those things might be perceived as being like a bigger dice. There's more potential from it, or you still might fall flat on your face. And so the bigger dice, what does that look like for you, is a good question. What actually is a bigger dice for you? Because a bigger dice means higher numbers on average. That's rule number 2. Bigger dice means higher average. Now, I'm going to take this one step further. I've got a third rule that I think will absolutely change the way that you think about risk and what you're doing in your business. Because what if we, instead of just looking at bigger dice, what if we rigged it in our favor? Now, this is something where I'm sure if you did this at Monte Carlo, you'd be banned. But in real life, in business, it's good to do this. We want to rig it in our favor. And what do I mean by rig it? I mean, instead of having this dice here, which is a dice that goes from 1 to 20, what if we just rubbed out all the numbers on there that were below 10, so that we've got a 20-sided dice maybe, but instead of, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it just goes 10, 11, 12, 13, all the way up to 20. And then maybe we rub out the 1 to 9s and we replace them with the same 10 to 20. So essentially, we roll that dice with all the sides. There's my beautiful drawing of it there. We roll it once and we've actually got the opportunity to score either 10, 11, 12, all the way up to 20. So these are the only things that we've got to be able to choose from. You can't roll lower than that. And if you were to average that out, if you were to do it like 100 times, you'd end up with an average of, 15 or 15 and a half. Because we're rolling them on average, we're getting the law of averages working on our side. But because we've only got these high numbers, we're rigging it in our favor. We're making sure that we're only rolling big results. And this is where rule number 3 comes in for business. Because imagine if instead of just having more rolls and getting more certainty, getting less risk in what we're getting there, and instead of just having bigger dice and getting that higher average, number 3 rule is rig in your favor. Because if we can rig it, it means that every time we're rolling that dice, we know we're going to get a better than average score. And so you could actually kind of draw this in a bit of a box like this. And if we were to look at this axis here and say, you know, these are the numbers on the dice. And in this over here, we've got how many rolls we've got. You know, if you roll one dice here and you've only got a 1 to 6 dice, so here, you're stuck in this area here. This is all that you can ever possibly roll. But if you roll more and more often, if you do more and more rolls, suddenly we're into this quadrant here where we have less risk. We kind of know what's going to happen. We're better at being able to predict it. But the actual results are still, you know, they're still below the super average. They're just average. We've also got the opportunity to move up into this option here, because this is where we can say, you know, I've got bigger numbers. I've got more dice. It would actually include these as well. You know, I'm like, we've got more numbers on the die, so we can make sure that we've got the potential to score higher, but we're still not rolling that often maybe, and we haven't rigged it in our favor yet. So we're still just getting, good, better average results. We're getting better results on average, but we're still rolling the same amount. If we want to move into this supercharged area, up into here, this is where we start having to do both. We want to have really big numbers, roll it lots and lots of times, which means we're doing bigger, riskier things, bigger pieces of marketing, bigger opportunities. We're taking them regularly, maybe something like renting a space on High Street, you know, in an area with lots of foot traffic. Maybe that's a big risk. It's got a big reward attached to it, but it might not fly. You know, it's a risk there that's potentially a big risk. That could be a big role. You want to make sure that you're doing it well. And when we try and look right up into this corner up here is where we want to sit as often as we can, where we know that we're rolling often. We're doing that so that we are reducing our risk and we are rigging it in our favor. Now, how do we actually rig it? It's usually through education and experience. Because through education and experience, we can say, well, I know that's not going to work. Last time I did this, it worked this way. Let's see if we can make it so that the more I do, the more I learn. I learn from someone else as well. I get some education, I study up, and I'm reducing those low numbers on my dice so I can roll again and again. And when we see this, suddenly you'll also see that there's a big mistake that people often make. And the mistake is people think that no action or less action, less action, they think will equal less risk. But the truth is that less action or no action equals no return as well. And if you want to talk about risk, no return is really 100% surety of failure. And so although it might be low risk or less risk, the mistake is saying, I'm not going to try that again. I'm not going to try something that's risky like that. I'm not going to step out and do Facebook ads because I've heard other people say that it's terrible. I'm not going to take that lease on High Street because what if I fail? There is 100% risk of failure if you never do those things, isn't there? Because you're never going to get results from them. It's just absolutely impossible to get the upside that you want to get without stepping into that risk. So really, when you look at it, what I'm trying to say is we've got risk all the time when we do things. If we take no action, there's no risk, there's also no result. And if you want to get better results, there's 3 ways of doing it. Number 1 rule is more rolls equals less risk. The more action you take, the less risk it is, but you're always going to be average. Bigger dice equals higher averages. So taking bigger risks, doing more adventurous stuff, more out there things is more uncomfortable as well, but you're going to raise your average return. Some things will still fail, some will succeed, but because you're trying bigger things, when you succeed bigger, and that pushes up your average. And then number 3, we can rig it in your favor by getting education and experience, by studying up, learning from others, seeing what has worked for other people. We can actually knock off a bunch of those small numbers off our dice altogether. And then when we roll regularly, we've got a super high average that works really, really well in our favor. That's all I wanted to share with you today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you can take this principle, the Monte Carlo effect, into your decision-making as you start planning out and moving forward in your business.